Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on the channel. We are back again with the tips this week. Gather round, round 5 has come and gone. It was a pretty ordinary round of tipping for me. I got 5 out of 9, which apparently put me in the bottom 34% of tipsters on ESPN Footy Tips. Just not a great round at all. I got the first couple of games wrong, Thursday and Friday night. Adelaide were the favourites. I thought that they'd get the job done in front of their home crowd, but Geelong, they look like they're going to be a fantastic team this year, which I did tip at the start of the season, so perhaps I should have backed in my pre-season predictions for that one. Sydney, I went for a bit of an upset. I honestly thought that we were a good chance of beating Collingwood, but just didn't look up to it at all. Skill level was very poor. Very lucky not to lose by a lot more, actually. We were very accurate in front of goal, and that was the one thing we had going for us on Friday night. Collingwood weren't quite as accurate, but they were better than us in just about every other facet of the game. North Melbourne, Gold Coast, I tipped the Suns, I tipped Carlton. They were always going to beat West Coast. They look like an absolute rabble right now. The Eagles, Brisbane, they managed to come back from behind again against the Bulldogs. Melbourne, I honestly thought that they were going to get their first win of the season. Didn't think much of Essendon. To be fair, still don't really think much of Essendon. But yeah, they're just in an absolutely terrible position right now, Melbourne. And then the 3 Sunday games, I got 2 of the 3 Sunday games correct. Fremantle, pretty easy tip. GWS, that margin of 28 points doesn't really tell the full story. They dominated that game for more or less 3 quarters. Hawthorn, I honestly thought they were going to do a number on Port Adelaide. And late stages in that second quarter, actually, it was looking like it was a repeat of that one Port Adelaide Swans game at Adelaide Oval last year. It was bringing back some bad memories for me as someone who was a fan of the Swans and attended that game. Hawthorn, well, they I wouldn't say they nearly made an incredible comeback victory, but 20 points it was at one stage with only 10 or so minutes to go. Crazier things have happened in the past, but yeah, Port Adelaide kicked away late, and it was really a bizarre match. Hawthorn, I don't know if their extended break had anything to do with it, whether they were just a bit sleepy going into that game and took them a while to wake up. I'm not sure. Just bizarre, but yeah, I really got that one wildly wrong. First game of round 6, Brisbane taking on Collingwood. This should be a great matchup. I can think of multiple great games these two teams have played in the past few years. Last year, Collingwood came from behind to win by 1 point at the MCG. There was, earlier in that year, there was the game where both of these teams were winless going into like round 3 or 4 or something. It was quite ridiculous, really, considering that both teams had made the grand final the previous year. And speaking of that grand final, the 2023 grand final is probably the greatest game that I've ever watched, in my opinion. And even before that, back in 2021, Collingwood were a crap team, but they still managed to put up a good fight against Brisbane, who won after the siren by a point or a couple points. I can't remember the exact margin. Zach Bailey kicked the match winner after the siren at Marvel Stadium. So these two teams have played off in some fantastic games in recent times. And I think that this should be another cracking game because Brisbane, they are undefeated. Their first halves have been an issue. I'm pretty sure they've just about trailed at halftime in all 5 of their first games. And they keep on managing to make comebacks. In last year's final series, they did it a couple of times. They're the comeback kings, and it's quite ridiculous what they're doing. But I think that they do need to fix up their first halves. We saw with Sydney last year, who started off games poorly, but really clawed their way back and just ran over teams in the end for at least the first half of the season before it came back to bite us. And I think that something similar could happen with Brisbane this year if they don't fix that area of their game up. And I do think that they are going to have their first loss of the season against Collingwood. I am going to back in Collingwood to pull off an upset victory. They've won games at the Gabba in recent years. It's not an impossible task for them. And I think they're going to give Brisbane a little bit of a wake-up call, a reality check. And I think it'll hold Brisbane in good stead, a loss here to a good team like Collingwood. So I don't think it would be panic stations for the Lions by any means if they do lose this game. But I will tip Collingwood by 14 points. Good Friday, North Melbourne taking on Carlton. These two teams have played off on Good Friday for the last 2 years, and Carlton got the chocolates on both of those occasions. But these two teams are more evenly placed than they probably were in the last couple of seasons. Carlton, they did just get their first win. It was against West Coast. Before that, they were in all sorts. North Melbourne, they had that good win against Melbourne back in round 2, but since then they haven't quite been able to replicate that form. Against Adelaide, they were all right. Then against Sydney, they were woeful. Gold Coast, for parts of the game, they looked pretty good, but then just got dominated in the last quarter and a half, I want to say. So, can they put up a good fight in this match? I think that they definitely can, because I don't rate Carlton at all still. From what I watched of that game against West Coast, they looked like they were going through the motions. Honestly, that result was more of an indictment on West Coast than it was meaningful for Carlton at all. They needed the win. They got the win. They just went through the motions, really, though. And I think they're going to need to put up a better performance than that if they want to have a comfortable win over North Melbourne. So I think Carlton will win this game. I still think they are the better team on paper. But it should at least be somewhat entertaining. I'm going to say that this is a high-scoring game, as North Melbourne games usually are, since they don't really know how to defend. But I'll tip Carlton by 18 points. Game of the round, not West Coast versus Essendon. I know Essendon have won their last 2 games, but I still don't rate them at all. And they're probably going to win this game because even though it's at Optus Stadium, West Coast are just rubbish at the moment. 3 of their first 5 games, they've lost by something like 60 points or more. Pretty terrible stuff. I don't see them beating Essendon here. I really struggle to see where their first win comes from, to be honest. They will win a few games this year at some point, but they just look completely listless. Their team morale is just... It's gone out the window. I mean, we saw Brady Hoff broke into tears in a post-game interview. It's pretty bleak at West Coast at the moment, and I think Essendon should get the win comfortably. It won't be a complete obliteration, but I will say Essendon by 44 points. Melbourne versus Fremantle. Wow, what has happened to Melbourne? I mean, the cliff was coming. We could see that last year. And yeah, they've absolutely just nosedived. I don't know what's happened to this club. I think they still have something like 15 premiership players on their list currently. Their list isn't that bad. Like, they do have holes in their forward line with their key forwards, but they shouldn't be anywhere near as bad as what they are. They should, at minimum, be at least in contention for finals with the list that they have, in my opinion. But their club culture, they've been going on about how good their culture is for the last few years. I don't believe that for 1 second. And Simon Goodwin, I think that he is absolutely on borrowed time. He has to be the most under pressure coach in the competition, because how he has let this club fall so far in such little time is it's a mystery. It's really quite remarkable. Fremantle last year, they beat Melbourne by 92 points early in the season, and then in Perth they beat them by 50 points, so they clearly know how to beat up on Melbourne, and I think they're going to do that again, because, how did Melbourne turn this around? There's just too much going on there. This will be a big loss. I'll go 61 points. Adelaide versus GWS. This is going to be an entertaining game at the Adelaide Oval. I think in recent years, I would like to say that GWS have had the wood over the Crows. I know the Crows beat them last year, sort of late in the season. They've lost their last 2 games now, the Crows. I don't think it's panic stations yet. They still looked pretty decent in both of those games. Should have really won against Gold Coast, and looked very good at stages against Geelong. GWS, they are probably one of the best teams in the competition. I know there's 2 teams currently undefeated on top of the ladder, but there's potentially an argument to be made that they are the first or second or maybe third best team in the competition right now. And I think that they are going to beat the Crows. I probably have a little bit more trust in the Giants at the moment. I think Adelaide do have to sort up a few defensive woes. This should be an entertaining, high-scoring game. I will go Giants by 15 points. Richmond taking on Gold Coast. The Suns, they look just about unstoppable at the moment. Home or away, doesn't really matter. They should win this one comfortably, even if Noah Bolter is playing before his sentencing. Make it make sense. Suns by 75. Moving on to the Sunday games, the Sydney Swans taking on Port Adelaide. I don't know how I feel about this one. I'm not confident. Port, have they just played themselves into a bit of form, or will they crash and burn as they somewhat often do after big wins like they just had? We didn't look impressive at all last week. We were just so fumbly. Like I lost count of how many times we had a handball chain going, and then we just completely fluffed the final handball going inside forward 50. Dropped marks. There were some absolute sitters we dropped. I can think of a few times. Joel Amati, I think Hayden McLean and Tom McCartan dropped some absolute sitters in the forward line. I'm not confident in us winning this game at all. We thankfully in the prelim final last year broke that hoodoo that we had against Port Adelaide. I think they won, like, I don't know, I can't remember how many games they won against us in a row. Dated back to like 2016. But we finally broke that drought against Port Adelaide. The memory of that 112-point loss last year still burns fresh. At the SCG, we should at least put up a better fight than that, but I think Port Adelaide win this one, to be honest. I'm not confident. With the injuries we have at the moment, I think the cliff is coming, and we could have easily lost by a lot more against Collingwood on Friday night. So I'm going to tip Port Adelaide to win this one by 23 points. Bulldogs taking on St Kilda. Now on ESPN tipping, this game that site had Bulldogs favourites to win this game, and I don't really understand why. They've still got a lot of injuries. They've only won 2 games against somewhat lowly teams. I'm not so sure why they're favourites in this game. I'm going to tip the Saints. Despite losing on the weekend, I still think that they've had a fairly impressive run of form and could be a decent game. I'll tip the Saints by 9 points, but I don't really see why the Bulldogs are favourites. Easter Monday, the traditional rivalry game, and we've got Geelong and Hawthorn back up the top ends of the ladder this year. This will be a fascinating game. It'll be just about a sellout. 2 of the best teams in the competition. Geelong are going to welcome back Tom Stewart, you would think, from illness. And this is going to be a great game to watch. I think that Geelong are still the better team, despite being lower on the ladder. I still think Geelong have potential to be the best team in the competition this year. They have been somewhat slow starters in the last few years, I would like to say. Even in that premiership year of 2022, they didn't start that year looking like the best team in the competition. They went on a 16-game winning streak at one stage. As Geelong build into this year, I think that they will show the AFL world that they are still very much premiership contenders, and I'm going to tip them to win this game in an absolute cracker. Let's go. 1 point. They're going to get the chocolates over Hawthorn. They're going to get the job done against Hawthorn in an absolute thriller. That leaves us at the end of round 6, where we have Gold Coast, according to my tips, as the only undefeated team on the top of the ladder. Quite insane. I don't think many people would have predicted that at the start of the year, even though they did have a fairly easy run to start off with. GWS up into second place, so the two expansion teams in first and second, Collingwood and Brisbane rounding out the top 4, Geelong moving up to 5th, Fremantle cementing a place in the top 8 for now, Hawthorn and St Kilda rounding out the top 8, Adelaide falling outside the top 8 for the first time this season, Bombers, Port Adelaide, Carlton moving up a little bit, Swans sliding down, same with the Bulldogs, and the bottom 4 pretty much all looks the same. So that is going to be this video over and done with. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know your predictions for the upcoming round in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.